off a daily fantasy. His number too high, then I'm probably fading him. He been on the road, he gon' eat up my salary. I hit up by, he gon' lie before lock. Play back to back, then I probably won't pick on the DFS bachelor, good as it gets. Bit a few liners and hit me a leg. He had a good game, but it might be a trick. Log in the Slack so I know who to pick. Sharing our liners, we all gon' get rich. New to this game, you should come to the pad. You might want some cash and get a good laugh. DFS sports, we gon' run up a bag. He heard every game and it's making me mad. You buying your lineups, I think you a cheater. DFS bachelor, he the new leader. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Bachelor Pad. I, of course, am your host of DFS Bachelor, and we're going to go over our Fantasy Draft NBA picks for Wednesday, February 5th. It is a 9-game slate, and there's going to be a lot of moving parts today, as we saw last night. So we already have a big trade to get to this morning. First things first, thank you for all your support. I truly do appreciate it. I really do. You guys are it's so positive and upbeat and nice in the comments section all the time. I appreciate you guys following on Twitter, just all the things. Thank you so much. If you're new to the channel, welcome to the team. Cheers to you all. Grab a coffee and Bailey's. I hope you enjoy your morning. Be sure to hit that subscribe button down below if you haven't done so already. Our other NBA video will be out shortly after this. And I'm hoping to have our XFL video for this week out later today. I'm like 90% done trying to sort through all of that. So lots of stuff, so hit subscribe. Also, like, comment, and subscribe. Be part of our weekly $25 PayPal giveaway as well. Really appreciate all of that. For those of you who are new to Fantasy Draft, what is Fantasy Draft? Fantasy Draft is rake-free DFS. What that means is that all of your entry fees go directly back into the player pool. No rake, no, when you hit over the cash line, winning $5 more than you entered, etc. More money for the players. Higher chances to hit into the money, rake-free DFS. It's a lot of fun. Be sure to check it out, fantasydraft.com. Enter promo code DFS Bachelor. And one thing I wish to point out, I try to remember before we get started, is that it has double the salary cap of DraftKings. So you have a $100,000 salary cap, so a player at $13,500 is really the equivalent of about $6,700 or so on DraftKings. So it's important to point that out. As usual here on Fantasy Draft, I just do a quick 5. A nice core that I like here in the morning. Now listen, today and tomorrow is the trade deadline. There's just going to be a lot of moving parts. If you're playing NBA DFS, it behooves you to kind of have your head on a swivel, keep track of what's going on, make sure players aren't being traded, that they're not being arrested because they're considering being traded. There's just a lot of things going on. You can follow me on Twitter at DFS Bachelor. Anytime the news comes out, I do my best to have it up there as soon as I get it. So, let's start here at the top. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA. He's 13.5 on Fantasy Draft, which is the equivalent of 67.50 on DraftKings for a guy with 50-point upside. He's actually 7.2 on DraftKings today. Cleveland against shooting guards is allowing the third most fantasy points in the league. In terms of Fantasy Draft scoring, they're 22nd against guards. 32, a 40, and a 30 his last 3 against Cleveland. I like SGA. I was going to go Chris Paul, but there is some talk about a Chris Paul possibly being dealt. I know that they were talking about him in Denver possibly, and it wouldn't shock me if OKC moves Chris Paul to a contender, maybe in Miami, something like that. So SGA, I'm confident will be there. Should see a ton of minutes in a plus matchup at home against Cleveland. I like SGA. Next, in a tough matchup historically, Denver is tough against guards. Or third in Fantasy Draft scoring against guards, and overall against point guards they're 13th. But it is a back-to-back for Denver. Mike Conley re-entered the starting lineup in their last game. He played 30 minutes. He put up a 35. When you look at his last 2 games against Denver, he has a 48 and a 34. He's 9,900 on Fantasy Draft. We're getting him for under 5K. We know he's got 40, 50-point upside. Hopefully that last game where he got rolling can be the start of something. It's been a disappointment so far for Mike Conley the first half of the year, 60% of the year in Utah. Back from the injury, back in the starting lineup. Nice value tonight. I like Mike Conley. Now, I have a couple of high-priced forwards here that I'm putting on here, so we need some salary relief. If you do not know, last night there was a 4-team, 13-player trade in the NBA. Minnesota traded away Shabazz Napier, Kate Spade-Diop. Robert Covington is also gone. 3 players who were getting minutes in the backcourt and on the wing. So there is some value to be had for Minnesota. The players they traded for will not be making their debut tonight. That's almost impossible for that to happen. Of course, crazier things have happened, but against guards, Atlanta allows the most fantasy points in the league. Against shooting guards, they're 29th, allowing the second most fantasy points in the league. It's a paced-up game for Atlanta, and I expect Josh Okogie to pick up a lot of those minutes on the wing. He's been playing in the mid-20s. It wouldn't shock me if he was in the 30s. Some other guys to watch out for, possibly a guy like Jared McLaughlin. Jarrett Culver should see more minutes, but I'm going to take the guy with the higher upside that's already been playing the consistent minutes. Now, he's wildly inconsistent, no doubt about that in terms of his production, but in a paced-up game against a bad Atlanta defense, he's 7-8 on FantasyDraft. That's the equivalent of 3-9 on DraftKings. That's about right where he's priced. In his last 2 games against Atlanta, he does have a 27 and an 11. In his last 5 games overall, he's got a 36, a 23, a 22. Also a 15 and a 10, but I think the opportunity and the minutes are there tonight for some salary relief. I'm going to go with a little Josh Okogie and take a risk, give myself the ability to pay up elsewhere. Next, Jason Tatum, especially if Kemba Walker's out. If Kemba Walker's back, I might pivot to like a Porzingis or maybe a Ja Morant and then pay down right here, etc. But right now, if Kemba Walker's out, Jason Tatum, the usage for Jason Tatum, the production for Jason Tatum is simply there. He is 14-8 on FantasyDraft, the equivalent of about 7,400. On DraftKings today, he's 7-9, so you're getting a bit of a value there. Doesn't have a great history against Orlando, but I like the upside and the low price. Orlando 14th against opposing forwards/centers on FantasyDraft. They're 10th against power forwards. He only had a 1 his last time against Orlando, so we can assume he got hurt in that game. I'm trying to remember that game for the life of me, but I just can't. But I do like Tatum if Kemba Walker's out. There are other options for me if Kemba Walker ends up playing. Like I said, Porzingis, maybe some Kevin Love against Oklahoma City. There's a lot of options right here. Larry Nance if Tristan Thompson sits. Draymond Green's been picking it up against Brooklyn. If you want to go all the way up, I do really like Drummond against Phoenix's weak front court, and he's only at 17K. So there's quite a few ways you can go right there. But for right now, I have Jason Tatum. For a while, I did have Drummond here. It left you a little bit less salary on the table. Actually, I like that. Andre Drummond. Phoenix is allowing the second most fantasy draft points to forwards/centers. Against centers, are allowing the 5th most fantasy points. Phoenix is very thin up front. DeAndre Ayton has 0 chance. So Drummond could go there as well. Leaves you 10-9-66. I like that as well. And finally, Karl Anthony Towns against Atlanta. He loves this matchup. Look at his last 4 games against Atlanta. An 86, a 70, a 72, and a 61. Unlikely Clint Capella makes his Atlanta debut tonight. He's been sitting out for Houston with the heel injury. I just don't think he'll be making his debut tonight. So Atlanta will, just be their typical Atlanta selves with no one who can stop Karl Anthony Towns. And FantasyDraft scoring, they're 10th against forwards/centers. Against centers, they're allowing the 8th most fantasy points in the league to centers individually. He's 18-9 on FantasyDraft, so we're getting him at what? A little under 9K on DraftKings. He's 10-6 today on DraftKings. It is a terrific value for both Drummond and Karl Anthony Towns. I like them both a lot tonight. So if we went with that core 5 of SGA, Mike Conley, Okogie, Andre Drummond, Karl Anthony Towns, still leaves you 10,966 per player. Plenty of salary to fill out the rest of your roster. There's going to be value opening up throughout the day. So keep an eye on that. Again, thank you so much for all your support. Keep an eye on all the news today. It's going to be a wild ride the next couple of days. It usually is around trade deadline time. May the fantasy gods be with you all. Don't forget to check out FantasyDraft. Promo code DFS Bachelor. Enjoy some rake-free DFS. I appreciate you all again. Good luck tonight, and we'll see you a bit later here with our other NBA video for the other sites. And we will also, hopefully later today, I will have our XFL video up for this weekend as well. Thank you all again. Goodbye, folks.